Let's start this way. Hi, everyone. Welcome,
Hello.
welcome. Happy Friday. Oh my gosh. Hello,
Woo.
Ingrid from the Netherlands.
Happy
Yes.
October.
Happy October. Laura and I were just lamenting how it's already October. We cannot
Yeah,
believe how fast, yeah, time is flying by here.
yeah.
Let us know where you're watching from. We're really excited to spend about an hour here with you today. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Marion. I am your host here with Etcher. Thank you for joining us on this Friday night, evening, day, wherever you are in the world. We are here with the wonderful Laura Krieger, who will be showing a demonstration painting clouds today with watercolor. So we will go ahead and just get started. All the information for today's demo and for Laura's mini workshop is in the video description if you would like to pull that up for now. Yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So everyone, please welcome Laura. Yay. Woo!
Yay. Hello.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, let's get started. Laura, what,
All right.
what were we doing today?
All right. So, hello, everybody. Well, thank you for being here this morning. So, today I am going to do a demonstration painting watercolor clouds. This is what I had done myself in preparation for today. So, I'm going to show you the way that I build up clouds and layers. There's a lot of different ways to approach skies in watercolor, and I think it maybe seems a little bit nerve-wracking because there's a lot going on and you're dealing with wet to wet and layering and glazing. So I'm going to show you a demonstration today, and then if you're interested, definitely I'll be breaking down all of the techniques in more detail in the mini workshop at the end of the month. So today's going to be kind of a spontaneous skyscape, I guess you could say. I told you to bring a pencil and an eraser, but in all honesty, when I'm doing things like this, I don't really draw much out. I just kind of go for it. Like I know that my horizon's going to be very near the bottom or my foreground, and I'm not going to be doing too much with that because I want the focus to be on the sky. So I am going to get ready to do my first wash. So I'm going to make a mix of ultramarine blue and a tiny bit of cerulean blue chromium, which I love that color. And I find that when you mix the two together, it just makes a really kind of natural looking sky color. If you don't have cerulean blue, that's okay. I don't think it's an absolutely necessary palette addition. You could always add a touch of a yellow to your ultramarine blue, just to kind of make it a little bit more green and a little bit less red. Yeah, okay. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare my secret weapon when I'm doing clouds, which is a tiny bit of paper towel, just, ripped off and scrunched up. I can't make clouds without that. So what I'm going to do is pre-wet the page, and I'm going to do my first wash wet into wet just to get the arrangement of the clouds, and then I'll let it dry before I do some glazing. So I'm going to take my 1/2 inch flat, and if you have a mop brush or a sponge or something, this would probably be a faster way to do this, but today I do not. So I'm just going to slowly start to wet this page of my new sketchbook. This is the first thing I'm doing it in, and I'm very excited.
It's so exciting. For everybody, she is painting in the perfect sketchbook. I just posted a link to that in the chat. And
I'm
again,
very
any
excited for
questions you
this.
have, yeah, for Laura regarding anything about her process or questions about her mini workshop, please feel free to put it in the chat.
Yes, I'd be happy to answer all of your questions. Okay, so yeah, going for a nice even sheen of water, and I'm just like looking at it from an angle, make sure that it's even and it's not sopping wet, but it's more than damp right now. I'm actually going to just let it cool off for a second so that it's not so wet. Okay, let's put this here for inspiration, if you can see that. I'm going to just go for it.
Let's go
I'm
for
going to
it.
going to add a bit more to my mix because once I start kind of doing this wash, I don't really want to be stopping to mix because it's wet to wet. So there's timing involved, but yeah. All right, let's just do it. Okay, so I'm going to just start to add some of that blue mix, and I'm just going to kind of leave some white space where I think I might want the clouds to go, and I'm going to be working quickly. Trying to, yeah, it's gonna be hard to talk my way through this. I can already tell. But I'm gonna do my best. Okay, so it's fine if it bleeds to the bottom. I can just wipe it up. And then I'm just gonna take my paper towel. I'm gonna start to blot into my wet into wet to just create those fluffy cloud shapes that I just find that the paper towel does that in a way that the brush doesn't when it's wet into wet. I'm going to take a bit more so that it's fully dry. And I have some things to say, but I will say them when I'm done this because I am concentrating. Okay, how does that look? That's busy. That's okay. If I don't really like what's going on right here, just kind of didn't work out the way I wanted it to, I'm just going to add a little bit more of my blue sky color and just kind of soften it off a bit. And I can just sort of get rid of that shape that I didn't love. Yeah, I think I'm also, sorry, I'm just looking at what it looks like for you because that's a bit of it's farther away than me just staring at it. I'm also going to just flatten off this one here a bit. Cool. Okay, this will be the working sky. There's a lot going on, but it's fun. So some things that I was trying to keep in mind as I was doing this was as best as I could, keeping perspective in mind, which is something that, I mean, it's hard to tell right now because we haven't added in any of the shadows yet. But, and I'm going to go over this more in the mini workshop, but just the sky too is in a type of perspective. So the clouds at the top of your painting are going to appear bigger, wider, and longer, and then they're going to kind of flatten as they get to the horizon as they're going further in my hand, as they're going further away in the distance. Trying to keep that in mind, I can carve that sort of perspective into the clouds when I add the shadows. And then the other thing I was also trying to keep in mind was the color of the sky tends to lighten as it gets closer to the horizon. So I think I definitely was able to do that on this side, a little less on this side, but I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. And the cool thing I think about skies, especially ones that you just kind of go for, you can really, in my opinion, do anything you really want with the sky. It's going to look cool no matter what, I think. And if it's not 100% realistic, that's also okay. So I just like to have fun with my skies. Okay, so I'm going to start to mix up my shadow color. I'm just going to get rid of this little bit here. While I'm I'm waiting now for the that wash to dry a bit more before I start glazing in the shadows. So I'm mixing up my shadow mix, which I always use ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And with these two colors, I mean, you can get a range of grays, and I kind of add a bit more ultramarine or a bit more burnt sienna, depending if I want a blue gray or a bit more of like a brown gray. So, if, you know, for example, here, if I add, you know, like 4 parts ultramarine blue and just like the tiniest bit of burnt sienna, it just dulls down the blue. And it makes it just kind of a bit of a blue gray. So maybe I'm going to layer in some blue gray, and then maybe I'll make another pile that's a bit more of a true gray. And then obviously I can thin out these mixes to create lighter values. So those are my piles of color that I'm going to be working with when this dries, which it is still quite damp. So in the
How
meantime, if
about a
anybody has any
question?
yeah, I'd love to
Yeah.
answer a question.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. Cool. Also, I was just going to comment that those gray mixtures are so pretty, and it's just two colors, two
Just two
opposite colors to
colors.
get. Yeah.
Yes, my favorite gray
Okay.
mix.
So the question here, I think it's from Annie. Correct me if I'm not reading your username correctly. But are Annie is asking, are you using washi tape on the edges? And if so, what kind? I find my paint still seeps under the tape when I work wet into wet.
Right. Yeah. Hold on. I'm just grabbing I'm not using washi tape. I'm using this. It's actually artist tape. So it's
Mm.
acid free and it's just white and it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. And I really like this because it doesn't leave any residue. And I do find that it keeps the paint on the inside of the tape when you're doing wet into wet. So I've used washi tape in the past and it works fine for me, but that's the stuff that I am liking now. So go to your local art store or something like that and look for artist tape because that stuff is pretty good.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah. Okay. I guess
Annie
we can
K.
start to.
Annie K. Thank you. Sorry, she
Sorry, is
just
there another
corrected
one?
me in the. No,
Okay, no problem.
we're just gonna go forward here. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna start to work on the horizon. So I'm mixing up ultramarine blue and quinacridone gold, another combination where you can make lots of green variations. And if you add in burnt sienna, it really just dulls it, makes it a bit more neutral. So I'm going to mix up a fairly blue mix because I'm going to add in some distant hills. So it's a light blue mix that I'm going to just add into the background just to anchor this on the ground. Can lighten it up a bit as I bring it down because what I'm going to do, even soften off some of that edge so that it's super in the distance and not such a crisp line. So maybe I'll do that a bit. And then I'm going to mix up a strong mix of ultramarine blue with more quinacridone gold for the foreground. So kind of in front of these distant mountains. And I'm going to be careful where I'm putting it because I find that quinacridone gold spreads very well and I don't want it to just overtake those mountains I've laid in. So I'm just going to keep it towards the bottom. The emphasis on this landscape is the sky, so I'm not going to do anything too crazy with the foreground. Just add it so that the sky makes sense in space. Cool. We'll come back to that. All right. How are we doing? It's still a bit damp, which if I were doing this for a full finished piece, I'd probably want to wait till it was bone dry. But in the spirit of this live demo, I'm going to press on and it's going to be fine. So I'm going to add some, what's it called? Shadows to sort of these clouds to just give them a bit of dimension. So I'm going to start with a light layer of the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue mix. And I'm just going to put that in and just kind of soften off the edges. And I can add a stronger mix to the bottom.
Yeah.
So that it has looks even more three-dimensional. Maybe I'll leave that crisp line right here because it kind of looks like there's another cloud in front of it that has its fluffy white part ahead of this cloud in the back. So, I like doing that. Maybe I'll even emphasize that by blotting into my gray. And I can come back and do a bit more of that after. All right. It's a strong shadow, but that's okay. I can just blot away if I think it's too much. And I'm just gonna, now that I've gone for this, I'm really gonna take a second and emphasize it. Okay, and I'll come back and emphasize that a bit more in a second. Gonna come to this, oh, okay. This spot on the right here, just splashed water everywhere, and do the same thing. Shadows, I mean, on a sunny day like this where the sun is overhead, I'm gonna put all my cloud shadows towards the bottom of the cloud, because it is a curved object. And I do like to blot a lot. That's why I said the paper towel, like I cannot do a sky without my trusty paper towel bits. Just adding in there. Starting to look nice and fluffy.
I love it. It's magical already. It's really coming together as soon as you put those shadow shapes in.
Yeah. It comes together pretty quickly, especially something like this that, you know, we're not doing a storm or like a sunset or something. It's just a sunny day. But, and even without putting the shadows in, I mean, you would have a really wonderful sky, just white and blue. But I don't know, I like doing the shadows. It adds some detail to the sky. And especially if that's what you want to emphasize in your landscape, then I think it's cool to do that. Okay. So maybe those are the big ones in the, those are the ones that are going to appear the biggest at the top of the page. And then if I want to try and add in some perspective as the clouds get further away, I can just add in, make the shadows a bit more linear. And maybe a bit more distant. So it looks like they're getting further away. This land, like this hill, I don't know, it's reminding me of the Sound of Music or something like that, like the color. It's very
That's so great.
verdant. Yeah. As you can see, I like to use 2 brushes to paint clouds. So one for laying down the paint and one for kind of moving it around. Yeah, which I will go into more depth, I think, about in the workshop, because it's a lot to take in today. So yeah, this is just kind of, it's a process now of just adding color, moving it around, just sort of blotting it away, creating dimension. This one here is looking a little bit boring. So I'm gonna fix that. Gonna just make a bit more of my gray mix off camera here. You want to be careful. So for example, I might come back and define these shadows even more. But I want to watch my timing now because that is wet. So I'm going to just focus on these distant clouds and return to that when it's a little bit more dry, or maybe even move on to the foreground a bit. That's really dark. So I'm just going to get some more water and add it on. And I like that I accidentally left some white there. Again, I'm going to emphasize that because it might look like there's a cloud in front of this cloud, which I think is cool. Take a tiny little piece of paper towel and just soften it away. I like to make my clouds delicate.
Yeah, I was gonna say there aren't any hard edges really in your clouds, and they're just so soft and fluffy and serene.
Yeah.
All of those words.
I think there is a place for hard edges with clouds for sure. On a sunny day sky, I don't know, maybe in a storm or something, it'd be cool to have some more hard edges, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that's this is what I'm just going to keep doing. I can answer a couple questions if anybody has some now. And if not, that's also okay. I can keep talking.
Sure. Yeah. I'm looking here. There haven't been any other questions I've seen. So
Okay.
if anybody watching can just go ahead and start sending in your questions so we can do a quick Q&A at the very end as well. That'd be awesome. Otherwise, while you're kind of working on these little bits, do you want to talk about your mini workshop? Yeah.
Yeah, so the mini workshop is going to be a continuation of this, just in a bit more detail. So really explaining this sort of layering and glazing and then softening off technique that I tend to, and the blotting that I use to create texture and dimension in the clouds. It will probably, well, it will be another sunny day type of sky, but I might add in, you know, some sort of like a distant storm rolling in just to add something a bit different. But it's basically just going to be an expansion of what I'm demonstrating today with some more information and insight. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. Everybody, I did put the link to Laura's mini workshop in the chat. It is on October 29th, 12 p.m. Eastern, I believe on a Friday. And like Laura said, it's 90-minute art class. So you'll be able to really paint along with Laura because she'll slow down completely to show you how to do this step-by-step approach that she treats her clouds with, and talk a little bit more about how you light your clouds, a little bit more about perspective too, and how to really pay attention to perspective and shadows and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at my notes to see if there was anything else that was going to be. Oh, and also for the mini workshop, we'll be using a reference photo. So we will also be dealing with trying to depict clouds that you see actually in a photo or in a landscape versus just sort of making them up as you go.
Good, great. Yeah, it sounds like it'll be a really great class, very comprehensive on just clouds. So if that's a struggle for you, yeah, or if it just completely confounds you on how to paint clouds in watercolor, I think this would be a great class for everyone to sign up.
And there's a lot of different ways to paint clouds too, which I might even go over a bit in the mini workshop. This is kind of just one technique that I use, but there's lots of different ways to paint clouds. So if we have time, maybe we'll even touch on some additional ways. There's no one right way. I don't like what I just did, so I'm just going to erase that with a paper towel. Okay, so I'm just going to maybe add a little bit to the foreground because it is dry enough. I'm going to take my smaller brush. This is a number 4 round. And I'm going to take a bit of my green mixture, make the brush fairly dry so that I can just maybe add some interest value in the foreground, maybe some texture, sort of like grasses popping up.
And just a time check, Laura, it's we're about 20-ish minutes in. Yeah. And we just got a nice handful of questions that just came in. So as soon as you're ready for a question.
Amazing. Because I mean, the beauty about these things is that this one especially is pretty quick for me to paint. So I'm pretty much done. And I'd love to answer your question. Yeah, it comes together quickly. So clouds are approachable.
Yay. It can seem very intimidating. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well then I'll just find a question here to ask.
Sure.
The second brush that you were using to pick up, I think the color, is it more on the dry side or is it wet but paintless? There aren't any pigments in it.
Which brush? The
one on your left.
Smaller one?
Yeah.
This was just wet and clean. Yeah, no pigment on this one. Pigment on this one.
Okay, but it's still wet. That smaller one.
Yeah, there's water on it.
Cool. Next, yeah, absolutely. Next question from Leanne. I think if I'm saying your name right. Would you mind going over the color mixtures one more time?
Sure. Yeah. So for the sky, I like to use a mix of ultramarine blue and a tiny bit of cerulean blue chromium. These are both Daniel Smith colors, but if you don't have this, because the cerulean blue chromium kind of it's a bit cooler than the ultramarine blue, so it ultramarine blue on its own is quite intense, so it just makes it look a bit more sky natural like. But if you don't have cerulean blue chromium, you could add a tiny bit of yellow to your blue mixture, so just to have a similar effect. So I'll just show you here. You could add something like a quinacridone gold, but I think adding something a little bit brighter, this is a Hansa yellow light, would be good. So I just picked up a tiny bit. Looks pretty green now, and if I add a bit more ultramarine blue, it comes back to being a bit blue, and you can see that that's just, to me at least, a bit more of a natural sky color than like a straight ultramarine blue. But it's personal preference. And then the grays that I use are different ratios of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. You could also use burnt umber, although I find that burnt umber makes these mixtures a little bit more of a green gray. And I find that burnt sienna and ultramarine blue is just a really good neutral gray. So I don't have any sort of black watercolor on my palette. Whenever I need a dark neutral, I'm always using either ultramarine blue and burnt sienna or Indian throne blue and burnt sienna. Makes great grays and blacks. And then the green was just ultramarine blue, quinacridone gold, and then bits of burnt sienna to just neutralize it a tiny bit. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks,
I'm going
Laura.
to tape peel this. Yeah, of course. And I know
we're going to do the satisfaction.
Whoever asked about tape bleeding through, I know it looks like the water bled through the tape, but I just was being messy with my painting, so it didn't actually bleed through. It just, I just went over. Yeah. I just wasn't paying attention.
Oh, it's a really clean line. Yeah.
It's a great line. Yeah. And it just doesn't, it doesn't leave any residue, which is important because sometimes masking tape can do that, and that just is no fun.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yay. Look at this.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, that's great. We do have a few more questions, and we have a little bit of extra time. Laura, thank you. That was so quick. How amazing you did this whole thing. And it's a beautiful little cloud painting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think this is Micah has a question. Is it necessary to have artist grade brushes? They're kind of expensive where they're at. What is your opinion on that?
My opinion is to buy the highest quality that you can afford.
Okay.
And I do think, I mean, there's variation within professional grade brushes, I would say. Like, all of my brushes are synthetic, which makes them a lot cheaper than buying a natural bristle brush. But I do think that there is something to be said for a good watercolor brush, the way that it handles and holds water. It does make a difference, and you don't want to be fighting with your brush to get the effects that you want. So if you can, I'd say invest in maybe one really good brush. You could invest in, like, a round brush is probably the most versatile, I would say, in my opinion, because you can get big strokes. You can also get fine lines using the point, and they hold a lot of water. So build up slowly. You don't need a ton of brushes. I mean, I really only used 2 for the most part for this painting. But yeah, I think investing in whatever you can isn't a bad idea if you can. And synthetic is always cheaper than natural bristle.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Very good. These are such great questions.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Alan is asking, will you be doing anything with really dark and stormy skies? I guess for the mini workshop, but if not, would you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so I think that the super dark and stormy sky is going to come into play more for my masterclass after the mini workshop. Maybe adding in a touch of that in the mini workshop, but if you want something that's focused on that, I think it's going to be in the masterclass. And any tips? I mean, I think pre-mix your colors beforehand. Have a bit of a plan in mind. Like, if you need to sketch your cloud composition a bit first, that's always helpful. Do some practices, like do some tests on scrap paper just to practice the techniques that you need to use before you go for it on the final piece. And, you know, embrace the fact that it's probably going to do the watercolor will probably do something a little bit differently than you expected.
Absolutely.
And that's okay in a storm. It kind of looks cool, I think.
Great,
Yeah.
cool. And on that note, everybody, if we get enough people signing up for Laura's mini workshop on October 29th, we will be able to open up that masterclass. So if that's really something that you would really love to learn from Laura, you can support her by signing up for the mini workshop so that we can get enough people to open that up. And Laura is an amazing teacher and is really great at the watercolor techniques that she teaches. Yeah, it's just really great. I'm really excited, and I would love to see her open up a masterclass later.
Would love to do one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's a couple more questions, so we'll go them real quick here. Yeah, will you or do you add any yellow to give another highlight to any of the clouds?
No, typically not. I have. But I find that for me, if I am able to build up enough contrast in the shadows and have the sky be the right value, then the white of the page is enough of a highlight to really pop. The only times I've ever used more of a yellowish color in a cloud would be maybe at sunset, if I'm trying to have it have a bit of a golden glow. But then I'm also using completely different colors to the ones that I'm using today. So for a sunny day, typically not, but that's interesting. And maybe I will experiment with that because that could be cool. And I encourage you to experiment with that too. And report back to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay. And then the next question here, how do you keep the paper moist enough for wet on wet clouds? And what happens if your paper dries? Can you still apply water somehow to restart the wet on wet?
So when I'm wetting it initially, I go for, now that I have this done, I can't really show you, but in the mini workshop, I can really show you exactly what the paper looks like. But I'm going for a good sheen on my page. And then if you're using 100% cotton paper that's heavy, and of a decent quality, it will retain the water long enough for you to be able to do most of your first wash. But if you don't get it all done, then I definitely would say let the whole page dry 100%. And then you can go in and do a second wet on wet wash fully from scratch on top of the initial wash. Don't try re-wetting when it's in a drying phase, because that's when you start to encounter, blooms and backgrounds and stuff like that, and lifting your paint. So if you don't get it all done on the first pass, let it bone dry completely and just start again, I would say. And use 100% cotton paper because it'll handle the water and stay wet. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Last question, and then we'll wrap up here. Is there a difference between cerulean blue and cerulean blue chrome?
I think so.
It's the slight pigment difference. Yeah.
I think it is a slight pigment difference. I'm not 100% sure. I did a lot of reading and researching when I was building my palette and read a lot of stuff about cerulean blue chromium, so I decided to go for it. I wish I could tell you definitively what the difference is, but I can look into that and get back to you.
Great. And on that note, if you join our Facebook group, if you haven't already been a part of it, I posted the link earlier in the chat there, but basically if you join the Facebook group and happen to do your own version of clouds and you would like Laura to take a look at it, you can post the work and Laura will be around actually in that Facebook group to give you some feedback. Maybe Laura will be able to kind of share her findings about the cerulean blue in that Facebook group too. So the link is in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, I have to say, I don't have Facebook for this for my art, so I can create one. But also, in the meantime, I would say that Instagram is probably
maybe
the
on
best place to reach me. But I will get on that because I think that would be something I should do.
Sure. Yeah, that's totally fine. But in the meantime, then follow Laura on Instagram. I'm just posting up her handle here, and just tag her. Yeah, tag her if you do a work, and then whoever asked that question about cerulean blue, send a message. She'll get back to you on that. Beautiful work on her Instagram too, by the way. Okay, yeah. And I think we did. We got a people who signed up already, so this is awesome.
Woo!
Thank you
Yay!
everybody who already
Exciting.
signed up. Please share
Yes,
with
thank
other
you.
people who you think, yeah, will who want to learn clouds from Laura this time around. And we hope to get as
Mhm.
many people as possible to sign up.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think we'll go ahead and wrap up here. I posted the links a
All
million
right.
times. You probably are sick of it now. And thank you everybody for your wonderful
Yes.
questions. Yeah, Laura,
Thank you for watching.
absolutely. Laura, this was a really great demo. I'm going to highlight your thing one more time because it was just so amazing how you did that so quickly. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, and for everybody, again, links are in the chat for everything else. Please sign up for the workshop and fill out our survey for today. Let me and Laura know how we're doing.
Yeah.
Laura's got a lot of stuff going on with Etcher. If you haven't already seen too, she's also doing a beginner series. So we just did the first workshop with Laura. It was amazing. It was great. So if you would
Yes.
still just love to just dive deep in with Laura on everything watercolor, I would suggest signing up for her beginner series as well. So I'm
Yes.
just plugging
Thanks.
that in here since
Yes.
I'm
So
hosting you
happy.
today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much, everyone. I hope to see you at the mini workshop.
Yep. All right. Have a good Friday, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you all next
Yeah.
time.
See ya.
Okay. Bye-bye.